This is the motto of the show Hour of the Truth. Rome never changes. They used to call us heretics and sent the Inquisition to kill us. Today they call us terrorists and send on their crusades. Times and methods may have changed, the goal still stays the same. Extirpate the remnant of the true Word of God, Bible-believing people who uphold the truths in Jesus Christ's name.
From 1203 to 1805, 50 million Christians died, suffering at the hands of Rome, 'cause they believed in Christ alone. They died through Europe, especially Spain, for they saw all but Christ is vain. He suffered by his death for men, to save them from their awful sin. 600 years of martyred saints that history cannot erase. With iron heel and iron hand, the Roman popes rule the land. Those ignorant of history may be swept into apostasy. We won't be lulled by Rome's sweet lie, with 50 million reasons why. Salvation is by faith alone, in Christ alone, by grace alone. A sovereign God give faith to man. Salvation's in the Maker's hand. This gospel offends Rome today. They offer up another way, a counterfeit, a compromise. Beware the ancient papal lie, with such a cloud of witnesses who by grace died in their Lord. Recall their memory to say, by the same faith we live today.
Hello and welcome to another broadcast from Juggler 66, Hour of the Truth. This is a broadcast in a slightly other format than otherwise, because a few days ago I was talking to my good brother in Christ from the United Kingdom, England over there, over the channel here from Belgium, on Skype, and we recorded that call intentionally, so he knew that it was recorded, with the idea of making a broadcast afterwards of it, with a totally new subject, something that you probably not have heard from by yet, I guess. The point is that you see already in the title, The English Common Law Equity, Germany and Excellence of History. This is not a normal title that I usually have, because what do I have to do with law? The idea to this broadcast came some weeks ago when Tom Press introduced me to his friend Robert Newman, and we have had some talks on Skype since then, and he knows a lot about the subject that we are talking about. And even though you think that probably the first half hour will lead to nothing interesting, I can assure you the two parts are very interesting, and there will be successive parts later on, and dealing with things that you've probably even heard of, but more in a conspiracy way of listening to, like the Sestakivy Act, and you are a person, and what is law all about, and what is law actually, and all this stuff. I cannot go into this because I'm also not very much learned about this, but Robert has a very good knowledge of this. So, without any more ado, I will leave it to the recording that I did a few days ago, and leave you with that. And of course you can always comment in the comment section as you are used to, or you can contact Robert directly with the email address that I will blend into the video, and that you can also find in the description box of the video itself. So, now, let's hear it from Robert, what he has to say. And then we will have this part 1, and then afterwards there will be a part 2. Enjoy!
I'm Robert. I live in the south of England in a place called Dorset. There's quite a few German-speaking people who come to this part of England. It's famous for its fossils. The geology here in Dorset is very famous. It's something strange about the geology of England is that there are many wonderful kinds of rocks here, and geologists come from all over the world to see this remarkable. It's the only part of England that has no motorway.
Is that the region of, I don't know, Brighton or something at the sea?
Not very far. Brighton is closer to London.
Only because I know that Brighton has these stones at the beach, you know.
Brighton is much closer to London. Dorset is on the English coast, near France. It's only 30 miles from France.
So but it also has these beaches with pebbles, right?
It has beaches with pebbles. It has some sandy beaches. I've been here for about 5 years, but I'm originally from Scotland. My parents were English, but I was born in Scotland, so I've been living in exile since for the last,
You're a legal alien.
I'm an alien, yeah, absolutely. I work for an area of law called equity, but I'm not a lawyer. In fact, I'm not interested in being a lawyer, but I am interested in knowing the law, just like you are, and like most other people are interested in knowing about the law. But I'm not part of the legal industry, so I'm completely free. You know, I am as a Christian man, I am free to learn about the law. In fact, we are encouraged to learn about the law.
That makes you directly very sympathetic to my listeners, I guess, because if you were a lawyer,
oh no, I'm definitely not a lawyer. A lawyer is someone who takes control of your life because you give it to him and he uses it for his own career and his own objectives, and he is part of the system which is controlling you in the first place. So it's not a great idea to be a lawyer. But I know they do some good things, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about equity, and equity is something beyond the legal side of life.
Yeah.
So anyway, today I wanted to talk about the English common law. I don't know if you've heard of the expression of the common law, but anyway, it's called the common law. The English, and I put that in inverted commas, English, the English common law, equity, Germany, and accidents of history. And I also put in brackets for accidents, in inverted commas, accidents of history. So
there are no accidents. Really.
There are no accidents, but they are called accidents, and we will see why they're called accidents in a minute. Let me start by saying thank you very much, Jörg, for allowing me to share these opinions.
Oh, thank you very much for coming on my show, Ralph.
On this subject. Before I begin, I don't want to be labelled as a historian. And I also don't want to be a lawyer. Okay, what do you want to be, Robert?
How about a Christian?
A Christian. I'm a Christian, yeah. I want to begin by, I don't really want to be labelled as a historian, although I will be talking about historical things. So you may be interested to know what I think history is and what it's not. I'm not one of these dogmatists, and I don't have a rigid agenda. To me, the history is the whole span of time in which the will of God is revealed to mankind and realized. So the whole span of time is the only history that I believe is really important. And I think history is a subject that we can speak about without needing to be dogmatic, and we should always in a conversation, we should always exchange our opinions without necessarily needing to argue. But
that's right. But we have to consider, of course, that most people who know history have their history teaching from the Jesuits, from the educational system, And this is most of the time wrong history that is taught.
Absolutely.
So this broadcast is actually about telling people about the true history, the often hidden history, or the hidden meaning of history, by telling the people some things only the so-called initiated often know.
I would say that the initiated people that you're talking about, most of these people control the lower levels of society. Most of them. These people, they are, it's like, what do they say? A little truth is dangerous. You know, the people, they have a little bit of knowledge, and it's the same with university graduates. They have some knowledge, but they have just enough knowledge to confuse themselves and to confuse everybody else.
Yeah, and to later be compartmentalized.
To be compartmentalized, to be specialized, to the point of they don't understand anything except their own subject, and then they learn that their own subject, they know nothing about that also, because they've learned it by some dogmatic process that they must never question. And I think that's the difference with the Christian perspective, is that you can always ask, not in unbelief, but in belief, because, or you may want to know something that you don't know, and you can study, and eventually you get an answer for that. So I think there's a difference between having a degree or belonging to an alumni and knowledge is one thing, but an understanding, that is something else. That is a bonus.
That is true, and only the Bible gives us real understanding.
Yes. So, I'm going to start on the subject of the English common law, equity, Germany, and accidents of history, which is an unusual. I think everybody would agree that that's an unusual combination of subjects. But anyway, I want to quote from a book, but the name of this book is called The Law of Succession. Succession. I don't know if you have a German word for that, Jörg, but The Law of Succession. The Law of Succession, Testamentary and Intestate. It's an unusual book. The Law of Succession, Testamentary and Intestate. It was written by an English author called W.S Holdsworth. I'll send you these references after we finish speaking. He was a 19th century lecturer at Oxford. I won't bore you. I won't bore people by reading much of this book. I just want to read the first sentence that he wrote in this book. And he begins this book, The Law of Succession, Testamentary and Intestate, and he wrote this, and I'm going to quote what he said, the very first lines of his book, very first sentence of his book, page 1, paragraph 1, sentence 1. The common law of England springs from the custom of the King's Court. The King's Court dates from the reign of King Henry II. So I'll just repeat that. The common law of England springs from the custom of the King's Court. The King's Court dates from the reign of King Henry II.
Where do we have to put that in history about King Henry II?
King Henry II lived between 1133 and 1189.
So about 900 years ago.
About 900 years ago, right? So this is so it's not the law of England, it's the common law of England. Notice that it's the common law of England springs from the custom of the King's Court. The King's Court dates from the reign of King Henry II, 1133 to 1189. I've read this book, and it's a very important book. So I'm not urging anyone to start reading English law books, not even Englishmen. But but I have read it, and I'm not urging anyone to start becoming a lawyer, or becoming a recluse, or hiding in a cave to read books like this, which are actually out of print. It's simply that some law books, some good law books, they usually start with something. Good law books always start with something which is condensed in the very first sentence. And most people are in a big hurry to read things. They don't stop to consider what is this common law of England springs from the custom of the King's Court. How does it spring from? What is the King's Court? And what is the significance of King Henry II? What is the custom? It springs from the custom of the King's Court. And these are, so I'm going to look at this first of all. The common law is the name given to the application of the law. You have law in Germany. Is the name given to the application of the law, which regulates the general population in Germany. Or in England. So the common law in England is the name given to the application of the law which regulates the general the public, or the public in England. It is slightly different from what we call the civil law. You have civil law in Belgium, Germany? You have?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, you have, right, okay.
That's what rules us, eh?
The rules, yeah, okay. So the common law
at least that is what we think, because people are not informed very well about the fact that the civil law has been infiltrated by Roman Catholic canon law.
Absolutely right. Yeah, exactly.
But that's probably something you will address later.
Yes, we'll start here at. So the common law is the name given to the application of the law. There are various applications of the law. I must explain that. But this particular application is given to the law which regulates the ordinary population, that is to say, the public, the general public, in England. Mm-hmm. And it is different from the civil law. The civil law also regulates the population in England, but they are two different things. They are not the same. The common law, the chief difference between common law and civil law is that common law is derived from the Bible. Common law is derived from the Bible. It's from the Old Testament. But it's called common law because it is slightly different from the Old Testament. Why is it slightly different from the Old Testament? It is kinder. It is more kind than the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, it's simply black and white, right? The application of the law, the letter of the law, and all these kind of things, right? A very rigid, black and white situation. But the common law in England is you could say that it's the law of the Old Testament practiced in such a way that it's not so harsh as the severity of the Old Testament. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, okay.
It's not so harsh, but it's not so kind also. It's not so flexible. It's a little bit flexible, but it's not very flexible. That is the common law. And the chief difference between the common law and civil law is that common law is basically derived from the Old Testament. It has certain flexibility, so that some benefit can come to people from its application. It's the law of the land. The common law is the law of the land.
Well, what people today most of the times have heard about is the law of the sea.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, that's what I was just about to say. The civil law is applied to the land because, for example, maybe there is a war and there is an occupying force in the country. Or maybe there is a bankruptcy. Maybe the government is completely bankrupt. Then they will impose another system of law. And this law will be called the civil law. See? That's the civil law. So the common law In normal times, the common law is the law of the general public. But in troubled times, it is the civil law. And they are very similar. One of them is a reflection of the other one, civil law, common law. And I'm only trying to get this concept in. So if the government collapsed, they would have to replace it by another government. And that temporary government would be to deal with the emergency situation. And that's the civil law. Does that make any sense?
Well, yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay. Yes and no. Okay. In Germany, or do you know? What's the word for the ordinary German court where somebody goes for a traffic ticket, or if they don't pay their town hall?
Well, the German term for that would probably be Amtsgericht, I guess.
Amtsgericht.
Yeah.
Right. This is the lower level courts. The lower level courts for traffic tickets, speeding charges, or something. That kind of odd. Yeah. Okay. Right. This situation of what you could call the lower courts. It's not the higher courts. It's just the ordinary, everyday, statutory court. I don't know if you know what that means. Statutory. It means that the German Parliament have passed certain rules, and everybody has to follow those rules. Yeah, through the German Parliament. The German Parliament said that you can only drive 80 kilometers an hour, you cannot drive 100 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, I get that.
It's called statute. Statute is the regulations or the rules for the public. These are statutes, and they are made by parliaments. But parliaments do not make laws. That's an unusual thing. Parliaments do not make laws. And if I say that, people will be very surprised. They will believe that parliaments are there to make laws. But they're not there to make law. The word parliament, parler, means to speak, to talk.
Yeah.
Parliament, it means to talk your mind, to speak your mind. Parliament. They do not make laws. Can you imagine a politician 6 months ago? She's working in the movie industry, but she's very famous, and she was elected to become a member of parliament. She was knitting, how do you say, jersey? Knitting pullover. She was 6 months ago, she was knitting a pullover at home. She has no idea about the law. But suddenly she's now an MP, a member of parliament.
Yeah, we have examples of that, like that here in Belgium too.
Right, so then these politicians now become members of the parliament, and everybody thinks that these people are making laws. But they're not making laws. Parliaments do not make laws. Parliaments make regulations. And these regulations are rules. If you join a club, if you join, for example, Wimbledon Tennis Club, if you want to be a member of Wimbledon Tennis Club, you will have to accept the rules of the Wimbledon Tennis Club. Yeah?
Makes sense.
Yeah. These are the statutes, these are the rules of the Wimbledon Tennis Club. Parliament has rules. Parliament makes rules. But they do not make laws. Parliament only makes the rules and the regulations or the statutes. If you want to be a member of Wimbledon Tennis Club, you have to comply with the rules of the tennis club. It's quite simple. If you want to be a member of the general public, you have to comply with the rules of for the general public. And that's what Parliament. And above the Parliament is the law itself. So that's the law. The law is always above the Parliament. Parliament is not the law. The law is above the Parliament. So then the question of where does the name common law, where does that come from? Why do they call it the common law? Well, it comes from the New Testament. You know, the common people. The common men heard him gladly. You know that New Testament Gospels? Yeah. The common men heard him glad. Common. So that means the ordinary man in the street. The common people.
What they also call lay people.
The lay people, yeah. The lay people. As for common, we might refer to the New Testament where we read the common people heard him gladly. And in the book of Acts, where the early Christians had all things in common, and so on. I mean, simply, that's all I mean. It's a simple thing to understand. The common man, the common. Now, other people will get hold of these things, and they will turn it upside down. And so you find, for example, the rulers of empire builder, the people who want to build empire, have constructed rules which they say is for the common good. Notice that term, the common good.
Yeah, that's a term Pope Francis likes to use very, very much.
Common good, yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, empires have decided on the common good. And who decides the common good? It is the general who decides the common good. The general, the so-called general good or common good. The Jesuit order decided the common good for the slaves in the slave plantations of Paraguay.
The reductions of Paraguay in the 16th and 17th century. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Did you know that one of the greatest admirers of the Jesuit slave plantations of Paraguay was the philosopher Rousseau? He was a great admirer of the Jesuit reductions in Paraguay. He believed that the future society should be modeled on the public good, the general good, he called it. Mm-hmm. Well, that was the Jesuit plantations. You don't need much imagination to realize what he was really talking about. The enslavement of human beings. So when you look at all of these things, we're really going to talk about the public side of life or the rules or the law which governs the public side of life. And then we're going to look at the law of the other side of life, which is the private side of life. There is public, there is private. These things, are they compatible? Can you make the public side of life and the private side of life compatible? How can you make them compatible? Is it possible to make them compatible? And this question, it is possible to make them compatible, but very few people examine this question. So there has to be, imagine two sides of a river. One side is the public side and the other side is the private side of life. And could there be a bridge between these two different positions? And this bridge, if this bridge exists, let's call this bridge equity. It's something good. It's a good idea, in which you had a system where people respect private life. But you notice always that the public side of life, they want to control more and more and more of life, even the private side.
Yeah.
You see that?
Absolutely.
So there has to be a balance here. There has to be some, what you call in English, an abridgment. An abridgment. There has to be some limitations. There has to be some balance. There has to be some solution. And the solution, most people believe that they need more government. Government has to do more and more and more and more for people. We want more legislation, more laws, more unfairness, more things. People are asking government always to do more and more and more things, which is a big mistake, of course. Because if you're in the public side of life, and we ask government to do more and more and more and fund many things, eventually everybody will end up working for the state.
Yeah, we will all be regulated from
cradle
to grave.
Yes. So the next, going back, starting with the Bible, so we, time and time again, nations and politicians and leaders have forgotten the law, or they made up their own interpretations of the law, or they've just ignored it, or reinvented what they call the law. If you tell most people that Parliament do not make laws, I mean, can you make the law of gravity? Or can you, if a law is a law, you didn't invent it, you simply discovered it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody invented laws. If it's a law, it's a law. So nobody's making laws.
Well,
we're only discovering laws.
Nobody invented laws. Well, let's say that the law was given to man, and the law was given to the Israelites at Mount Sinai.
Yes, but
their God gave them the law in 10 commandments.
Yes.
And the problem is that when people went away from these laws, they always make laws more complicated to sail around them.
Yes.
And that's something that you can see in the history also when you go back to Babylon and you dig up these old stone tablets where there is law of that time written on. You can see that I think the oldest law tablet that I've heard of, there was about 80 or 90 laws written on it.
Yes.
That was only not that much more than the 10 commandments of God.
Yes.
But from that, everything derived that we have today. And when you go to the law books today, well, the law of a country can fill more than a library that you cannot even go through in one day.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
So we also have the expression that governments are corrupt, and the more corrupt a government gets, the more laws it needs.
Yes, that's perfectly true. But I also believe that the government that we have is the government that we deserve. If people as a whole only get the government that they deserve, because it's a reflection of their will. If people vote for certain things, that is exactly what they will get. I think we get the government that we deserve. That's what I think.
Yeah, most of the time people don't even care about the government as long as the government leaves them alone.
As long as the government leaves them alone. If only if only people would understand that the government is not a sugar daddy.
No.
The government was not invented to be the answer to every problem. And but I wanted to also say that the kings of the earth, they are subject to the law also. Would you agree with that?
Well, in a certain term, yes. They are subject to the law, but if they don't like the law, they're going to make up their own law.
Exactly.
That's the problem that we are faced with today, right?
Yes.
Like, for example, when we just leave England and Germany and look to the United States of America, since George W. Bush and since 9/11, the United States of America is more or less ruled not by laws, but by executive orders the president makes. And why does he make all these executive orders? Because they fit his agenda. And his agenda is, of course, the agenda of the Antichrist.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree that if you notice that these are executive orders, and why are they executive orders? Because most people are still in the kindergarten side of their life.
Yeah.
They're depending upon the statutes, the rules, the regulations, the politicians, the electoral process, the political parties and so on, none of them will actually fulfill anything. They will simply go round and round in circles, and you will get more of the same. And people, your grandfather, my grandfather, they could have told us when we were young men that politicians are a waste of time. but we were not listening to them. We wanted to find out for ourselves, you know. So, is that right? So the kings of the earth, when the Queen of England or the Queen of United Kingdom, when she was crowned in Westminster Abbey, one of the parts of the coronation, she held the Bible in her hand, and she promised to uphold the laws of God. She does not
repeat the royal declaration anymore, right?
But no, I don't know whether she did the declaration. I'm only saying that here is here's a moment where the leader of the nation or the leader of the country is holding in her hand, and in fact, Scotland is represented at that coronation. The head of the Church of Scotland gives her the Bible and said to the Queen, "Your Majesty, this is the greatest book that mankind can afford." And he gives her the New Testament. This is part of the coronation. So there is no question that above kings, above rulers, above governments is the law of God. Having said all of that, Jesus in the New Testament, notice what, you've heard of. So there is the law there. There's the rule of law, that God is in complete control, ultimately. And then you see in the New Testament, notice how Jesus treats this subject of the rule of law. He says, therefore, all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do you so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. So there's the law and the prophets. That is the so-called golden...
That's the so-called Old Testament, the law and the prophets, yeah.
The golden rule. The golden rule. It's not simply the law. It's also the prophets. New Testament, how many times does it say in the Gospels, this was done to fulfill this, this was done to fulfill this, this was done to fulfill... How often is the word fulfill used in the New Testament? Hundreds of times?
I don't know, probably. Well, I didn't count it, so.
But you see, it's many references to this. So the prophets, the law and the prophets, the law and the prophets. So the law is a wonderful thing, but the law and the prophets, that gives us this golden rule. And then I think it was Martin Luther who said, or he wrote it somewhere. I remember him reading it. If you read a verse of the Bible and you fail to see Jesus Christ, go back and read it again. That is Martin Luther. Mm-hmm. And about prophets, Amos 3:7. What is it? God will do nothing except first he reveals it to his servants, the prophets. Amos 3:7. So he reveals his word to the prophets, the people don't listen to it, and then there's complete confusion, and so they get kings and emperors and popes and everything else, right? So that's what happens. That's what. But anyway, King Henry II. King Henry II, we started talking about him. He lived in the 12th century. And Henry II was a good king, and there are not many good kings, but Henry II was a good king. He did not want to tax the people of England too much. In fact, he was not doing a good job, according to the Pope. The Pope was not very happy with Henry II. Henry II was a complete disaster. He gathered about 20% of the tax which the Pope said that has to be sent to Rome. Year after year, he was failing to gather the tax, and he didn't want to do anything about it. He believed that the people should not be oppressed by the tax system. So the representatives of the Pope in London, in England, in Canterbury and Oxford, reminded him that you failed again, you're failing with your tax system. You have to do something about it. Every year you have to send the money to Rome. And it just got worse and worse. Henry II, I don't know why, but Henry II was reluctant to become to enforce. He was reluctant to enforce strictly the tax system on the English people. And Rome became more and more angry with the situation. And eventually, after several years, they warned him that if you do not start to collect the tax properly or satisfactorily for us, then we will remove from your government the complete tax system. We will remove it from you and we will give it to other people. This was the threat for Henry II. So another few years passed. I think it was 1 or 2 years. And eventually the Pope decided to do something about it. He ordered Henry II, King of England, to come down to Canterbury Cathedral, and in Kent, which is in the southeast of England. And he travelled down to Kent, and they were going to talk about this. They were going to get some kind of solution. And when he arrived, he was told to arrive as the king, so he came with the crown and all of this. Went into the cathedral, and as soon as he went into the cathedral, they closed the doors of the cathedral. They ordered him to take off the crown, to throw it on the ground, and then they closed the doors of the cathedral, and then the monks who were controlling Canterbury Cathedral got ropes and they beat him. They badly injured him. Mm-hmm. They would not let him out of the church all night. And they hurt him very badly. This is Henry II. They beat him until the next day, when we allowed him to go. When they allowed him to go, they had accused him of killing their representatives and stuff like this. They just invented these stories that Henry II had killed one of their agents. His name was Becket. Becket was the agent for the papacy in Canterbury. Becket did not like Henry II. Henry II did not like Becket, right? So when Becket was murdered, when Becket was killed, they blamed...
Was that Thomas Becket?
Thomas Becket, yeah.
Yeah, wasn't he a cardinal or something?
Yeah, he was the Pope's...
It's just that name rings a bell with me with the
Becket,
research I've done over the years. And
Becket,
Thomas Becket was one of the most Catholic people in England at that time, right?
That's correct. He was the man who was putting the pressure on Henry II.
Yeah.
Anyway, when Becket was murdered, the man who was accused of murdering him was Henry II. And so the books of history say that Henry II killed Thomas Becket, but in reality, he had nothing to do with that.
And how can you come to that reality?
Well,
how can you get to this real history then?
Well, you can get to the real history by reading more than Roman Catholic propaganda.
Okay, that's a good start.
If you read several, there are several things which say different things. Henry II had many problems, but he was not a murderer. He was known as a good king. He didn't have time for murdering people. Henry II is now injured, or at least he's recovering. Mm-hmm. from being beaten up in the church in Canterbury. You can see examples of what I'm saying also in English history, but people don't read that kind of thing. They only read the official, the histories which comply with the Roman version.
Yeah, most of the times they even like to read Harry Potter more than that.
Harry Potter, etc. Right. So Henry II now is taken back to London to recover. But when he gets back to London, he orders his judges, he orders his Chief Justice. And this Chief Justice, his name was Ranulph de Glanville. Ranulph de Glanville was the Chief Justice of England at that time. He wanted to see Ranulph de Glanville. Ranulph de Glanville came to the king, and the king said, Glanville, I have a job for you. What job you have? I want you to do some research. I want you to study the Bible. I want you to study the Bible about the subject of tax. The tax, okay. And when you finish that, and I want you to also read everything that you can find about the subject of tax. Can you do that? He says, of course I can do that. And if you can do this, I want a report on my desk as soon as possible. What is the law about tax? He said, of course I will do that. We're already writing a book on the laws of England. But he said, yeah, but I especially want this subject to be given top priority. Can you do that? Yes, he said, I will do it. So Glanville disappears. He starts to research the subject of tax, the tax system, and the Bible and the tax system. Now Glanville was a very intelligent man. He said, you could read anything. I just want you to report back and tell me what is the law of tax from the biblical perspective and how are other countries doing this, and please give me a picture. But it must be simple enough so that I can understand it. You can write as much as you want, but I want you to give me a condensed version and the document when you come back. So Glanville said, yes, okay, I'll do this. Glanville goes away. Meanwhile, the letters continue from Rome. The war
he has to raise more taxes.
Yes. So now Henry II is in really big trouble. The next thing to happen would be that he would lose his crown, and they would give it to somebody else, or he's in a real big problem.
Yeah, in danger of being excommunicated, right?
Anything.
Because that's what the Pope did at that time, because we are talking about the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, when the Antichrist, the Pope of Rome, ruled over the kings of the earth.
Yes.
As he does today too. So when he excommunicates a king, like he did, for example, with Henry IV in Germany.
Yeah.
And he had to go to Canossa,
Yes. Absolutely.
But please continue, Robert. I don't want to interrupt your flow of thoughts.
Okay, so this is similar to what you know in Germany, right? So, okay. So Henry then gets a communication from the Pope's messenger. He said, Your Majesty, the messenger told him, the Pope has decided that if you do not improve your performance in the tax, we are going to make a special corporation which will do the tax. You will no longer have a tax department. We will do the new tax, and we will make this new corporation in the city of London.
Oh, now it's getting interesting.
Yes. Now, and the shareholder for the new corporation, the shareholders of this tax authority, the shareholders, they will appoint agents in all of the counties of England. Mm-hmm. And that means you will not have any more powers related to tax. We are going to take over this. So Henry's thinking that his life is coming to an end or something, right? Then a few weeks later, Glanville returns to London. He's been studying in Oxford and Cambridge and the continent and in Germany, and he wanted to understand the tax, and he wanted to do a good job. He came back with his report, and he came to see Henry II. The results of his... do you have your results? Yes, I have the results. And what are the results? Can you explain it to me in just a few minutes? He said, yes, I can do that, but I have a large document. But this document is about the laws of England. He said, yes, but I only want you to talk about the tax system. Tell me about the tax system in a few minutes. What can you tell me about that? Glanville said, well, basically, there is a group of people here in England who are exempt from the tax. There's a group of people who are exempt. They don't have to pay the tax.
Like the clergy.
And who are these people? The king said, who are these people? He said, well, there are certain groups like the clergy and the barons, for example. The barons who owned the land of England.
Yeah, the barons, the dukes, the lords.
The dukes, yeah, these people.
The so-called nobility.
Yes, the nobility. The nobility are exempt, not all of them, but the people, the ancestors of William the Conqueror, who owned the land of England, who are the legal owners of the whole land, these people do not have to pay tax. So then he said, okay, and why do they not have to pay tax? And Glanville said, well, because they are barons and because they are nobility. He said, yes, but if they are barons and nobility, why don't they have to? What does the law say about this? Why do the barons not have to pay tax? Why do the nobility not have to pay tax? I don't want to know that they don't have to pay. I want to know why they don't have to pay. And he said, well, it's a little bit
complicated.
He said, explain it to me. And he said, well, it's because these are men who have made a will. They have made a will. Yes, they have made a will. You know, how would you say in German? They have made
a testament.
Testament. They have made a testament.
Yeah.
These people have made a testament, and after they make a testament, then they, in the eyes of the law, they are no longer considered to be children. But if you don't make a will, then in the eyes of the law, you are considered to be a child, and if you're considered to be a child, you are liable to pay the tax. So the king said, so these people have made a will, and because they made a will, they are exempt from the tax? Yes, he said, that's the situation. Amazing, no? And he said, well, how many people know about this? He said, very few people know about this.
Like today, even less probably.
Okay, so Glanville said that very few people know about it. Even the barons don't know about this. Why don't the barons know about it? Because the barons have a lawyer. The lawyer knows these things, but they don't talk about it to the barons, right? The lawyers know these things. So these people have exemption from the tax because they have made a special kind of will. He said, yes, not every... And then the king asked him, is there more than one kind of will? He said, yes, there are various. There's only one kind of will which makes the people exempt. It's a living will. He said, a living will. What do you mean by a living will? He said, well, this will comes into force while the man is still alive. And
whereas we only know a testament, a will to leave for the things that have to be done with our possessions When we are already dead.
Correct. Yeah. So this living will, is the reason why they are exempt. But where does the law say this? I've never heard of such a thing before. What you're telling me is completely new. This is Henry II. And he said, well, I will explain it to you. It's in the book. It's in the things. Where is that written? Where does it say that? He said, well, it's in explain it to me. It's in the New Testament. Where does it say that in the New Testament? So Glanville is afraid, he's afraid of the king.
Yeah.
But he's trying to explain it to him in a very simple way, but the king really wants to understand this. What are you saying? He said, it's in the New Testament. Where is it in the New Testament? Show me in the New Testament. Where does it say that? He said, well, let's examine this, if you want. Where does it say that in the New Testament? Let's have a look. Are
you referring to Galatians 4 again, or what?
No. I'm talking about the Gospel. It's in the Gospels.
Oh, okay.
Where is it? It's I think it's okay.
Well, I think that a lot of my listeners, and even me, who is listening on this side of the end of the line, are as dumbstruck as the King Henry II at that time.
Well,
we want to know, Robert. We want to know what you want to know about this law, and where is that to be found in the New Testament?
In the New Testament, it's absolutely in the New Testament. It's in the Gospels, right? So I'm just trying to find this. Right.
You go ahead and find.
Okay. No, I mean this is just very simple things, but all right. Right, just a second. If you turn to the right. Yes, is Matthew. Yeah. If you go to Matthew, the 17th chapter.
Okay.
Matthew 17.
Okay.
Right. So, yes, this is exactly here. It's like many things. They are so simple that people cannot see them. And so but anyway, Matthew 17, if you turn there to the 17th.
Yeah, I got it open, all right.
Matthew, okay, right, okay. Excuse me, go to the 24th verse.
Yeah, okay. And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute, money came to Peter and said, doth not your master pay tribute?
Carry on.
He saith, yes. And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, what thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? And Peter saith unto him, of strangers. Jesus saith unto him, then are the children free. Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea, and cast an hook, and take up a fish that cometh first. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. Take that, and give unto them for me and thee.
Yes, this is exactly the part there, right?
That is a very interesting part. Verse 25. Whom do the kings of the earth take customs or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Strangers being the inhabitants of the lands, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, it's up to you to explain this a little.
All right, okay. Good, thank you very much. Okay, so if you go to, I'm trying to find the King James Version for Matthew 17, right, so let's have a look at, Matthew 17, right, KG, this is worth waiting for, I think it's,
it's quite interesting.
Right.
I think there are a lot of people who read through this part in Matthew 17 and don't understand what that actually means. And certainly not the 27th verse.
And
take up the first that cometh up, the fish,
Right,
Has
okay.
opened his office to find a piece of money. Well, I think the beaches would be full of people who are going to fish.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, right. So, Matthew 17 and verse 24. And when they were come to, did you know that Capernaum was the head of the tax system in Israel at that time?
No, I didn't know that.
Capernaum was the headquarters of the tax system during the Roman occupation.
Oh, okay.
And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, doth not your master pay tribute? And he said, yes. This is Peter who said yes. Peter was he's very impetuous. He's always defending, he's always trying to protect, he's always very quick to say something. Yeah. He said yes, he does pay. He does pay these things. Notice what Jesus does. And when he was come into the house, notice he didn't correct Peter in the public. He corrected him when he came into the house. This is absolutely beautiful. This, when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, what thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Peter said unto him, of strangers. Jesus said unto him, then are the children free. Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them. See, notice that? So, we don't want to offend people. Mm. We don't want to bring offense. Therefore, go to the sea, cast a hook, take up the fish that first cometh up, and when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give unto them for me and thee. Now, Capernaum was a Philistine city in the ancient times. Mm-hmm. And the gods of the pagan world, of the Philistines, included the head of the fish, which of course is the mitre. You know, the head, it looks like a fish.
That goes back to the fish god, Dagon.
Right, Dagon.
Oh,
Dagon was the god of the Philistine tax system. Mm-hmm. And the symbolism, of course, the disciples did not understand what was happening. They had no idea why Jesus was sending them to the sea to get a fish, and they find the coin in the mouth of... It didn't mean anything to them, but it happened. And they didn't understand because out of the mouth of the fish is coming a coin. In other words, out of the system that they created, the law system, there was the remedy coming out of the mouth. What comes out of the mouth? Out of the mouth is coming words, no? It's a symbol that inside this tax system is the remedy for the tax system. That's what it represents. That's what this thing means. So, but more than this, what do you think? Do the kings of the earth take custom of their own children or of strangers? Peter said to him, strangers. Then the children are free. The children are free. Then the children are free, but not before. The children are free. Do you remember I was describing the public domain as a kindergarten? Mm-hmm. When I was a child, I was no more than a slave. There's the children there. Then are the children free. Anyway, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I try to follow, yeah.
Then are the children free. So, what does it say in Galatians? It says that when I was a child, I was no more than a slave. So also, when we were children, we were, etc. This is St. Paul talking about that. We grew up inside this kindergarten. So that's what I'm saying. From a legal point of view, you you must continue to pay the tax. Of course, if you're in the legal side of the system or the public side of the system, that's absolutely what we have to do.
And because you do not make a will to declare yourself living and out of the system,
yes, if
you are always caught in the system.
Well, you are presumed to have no interest in the beneficial side of the system. If somebody opens a bank account and you go away for 5 or 6, 10, 7 years or whatever, and nobody uses the bank system, they will start to presume that you're not alive. And that's how the presumption that you must be lost beyond the sea because nobody's heard from you. Mm-hmm. And that is the justification to control your system. When you become older, that is the justification to consider that you're still a child, or you're lost, or you're incompetent, or you don't know what you're doing. You're only a child. See that?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and also with the mentioning of the sea, and we were talking about the law of the sea,
yes.
And we know that in Bible prophecy, the sea has a meaning of nations, multitudes of people, tongues, and people.
Yes.
Is that what that law of the sea actually refers to?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a thought that comes up in this moment, you know.
Yeah. So you have this here in England. Not long ago, there used to be a tax system of the land. It's called the inland revenue. Inland revenue. It belongs to the tax system of the land. And then about 20 years ago, they made a new organization. It's called the HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. Revenue and Customs, right? This used to operate only for the ports. The port cities, you know. If you're coming in a ship, they check how much cargo you have and how much revenue that is to do with the law of the sea.
Yeah.
But then they amalgamated the law of the land and the law of the sea into one gigantic tax system. And then the law of the sea started to do the administration of the tax on the land. Mm-hmm. And that's what United Kingdom today is like that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, you can compare it to the sea coming onto the land. It's very similar. It's parallel, yeah? That situation. So, and if you have a bankruptcy, imagine a country is bankrupt. Then they will make a new regime to go on top of the law. They will have the civil system or the...
I was told in school so many years ago that a state can never get bankrupt.
A state cannot be bankrupt in the same way that a state cannot be a creditor. How if something is the state, it must be dead. But an estate is alive. Mm-hmm. A state is not alive. The Pope is lying in state. That means he's dead, right? If the Pope is lying in state, doesn't that mean that he's dead?
Yeah.
One of them is energized, the other one has no energy. What do they say? I know it's probably not true. E equals mc squared. If you take away energy from a body, it has no energy. And there's a difference between a state and an estate. How do you say estate in German? What's the word for that?
Estate. Well, I have to look it up.
Estate.
Property.
Air property.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just giving you another word for state that we use in German, so that's property or discount or estate, like you say.
Yes, an estate. If you go to Acts 28:7, the book of Acts 28:7.
Yeah.
See if you can find. You got it? Oh, right. Okay. What does it say in 28:7?
It says, in the same quarters were possessions of the chief man of the island, whose name was Publius, who received us and lodged us 3 days courteously.
Yeah, 28:7, right? Okay. The word possessions, that word means an estate. Let's find. I know you like the King James. I like very much, but the word estate, that is the meaning of the word estate. Let's take another
Possessions
example.
and estate is meaning the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, but I want to show you a version of the Bible which sometimes it's good to compare different versions. You see it in this version. Go to New Living Translation. Yeah, and you will see that I'm not inventing this. Somebody else, if it's invented, somebody else invented it. 28:7. This link here. Just to confirm that possessions and estate, or whatever it is
okay, New Living Translation. Where do you want me to go there?
The same verse 7.
Okay, so that's Acts.
Acts 28:7.
Acts 28. So, near the shore where we landed was an estate belonging to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us and treated us kindly for 3 days.
Yes, now that's St. Paul, as you know, are being shipwrecked on the island of Malta.
Yeah.
And shortly after he was shipwrecked, near the shore where we landed was an estate belonging. Notice that, and it's beautiful, right? So, he gets a very friendly welcome when he goes there.
Mm-hmm.
He's allowed to stay there, and so the subject of estate rather than state, they're two different things. The estate and the state are two completely different things. The estate is a private thing. Mm-hmm. Even the Romans understood estates. There was an estate, they have a villa on the estate, and so on. These estates are very ancient things. And this estate belonged to a man called Publius. And he welcomed us. I mean, they were complete strangers, but they were welcomed. And the Bible is very clear about this. So this, in the second section, when we talk more about this, we will develop this thing, and we will introduce the Roman law and Germany, and we will connect these two different things.
Well, that can be a very interesting part too, then, yeah.
Yes.
You were working up to a climax from the beginning, and now you've reached it. We finished the broadcast.
No, we stopped for a cup of tea.
Yeah, we stopped for a cup of tea, but I will put this in two parts, so that people have to wait a few days until I upload the other part.
All right.